Lovers of lore, thank you for joining me for the fourth installment of the Lost Caverns of Ixalan story. This part of the story starts out with Quintorius, Huatli, Weta, and the Imperial troops in the city of the River Heralds. Nakanzel, the River Herald guide, had just arrived at their quarters to inform them that the convocation was beginning. So they gathered their gear and headed up a giant staircase that led to a massive golden door. Quintorius moved to study it, but was stopped by a commotion. Vampires from the Legion of Dusk were there. The Imperials reached for their weapons, but an ancient merfolk shaper by the name of Pashana arrived before a fight could break out. Pashana greeted Huatli and then inquired from each group why they were there. Quintorius said that he came for knowledge. Huatli said they came looking for this door. The vampires were hostile and outright refused to explain their presence. The Imperials implored Pashana to imprison or destroy the vampires. Pashana considered them all invaders, so she said, "We could just throw you all back into the waters and leave you to your fate." Harsh words were spoken on both sides before Huatli cut in. "Pashana, we both want to open this door. Why not work together?" Pashana was intrigued. Huatli offered translation skills to the merfolk so they could translate what was written on the door, and she offered an olive branch to the vampires by offering them the opportunity for peace. They had all battled together against the Phyrexian invasion. They might be able to build a better world together. Bartolome spoke up, saying his queen might be willing, but Vito silenced him. Pashona agreed to let Quintorius and Huatli translate for them. When they stepped up to the door, they ran into a new problem. This language wasn't the same as earlier. It was in a different dialect, and there was a box with compartments beside the door. This is going to take some time, Huatli realized with dismay, but Quintorius had an idea. Pulling out the garment from earlier, he summoned the old ghost again, hoping he could help translate. As soon as the ghost appeared, he looked pleased. "Perfect! You made it to the door. We have to go in and warn the Oltec about the Myco-tyrant." The key needed to open the door was the beads that came along with the ghost's clothes. The pink beads were made of cosmium, and they went into the box last after all of the other colored beads. The ghost shied away from the pink beads in particular as they interfered with his existence. The beads laid out into the form of a serpent. The box glowed and the door slid open. They headed down into considerable depths and were met with the impossible. A wide open sky that even had clouds. There were people here too. One of them said, "Find Anim Pakal. The seal has been opened." The story then turns to Malcolm, who was having a harder time in the mines. Now that he had cut the elevator ropes, he had to fly down and either carry breaches or wait for him to climb down himself. That made it very slow going. They kept their bandana masks on and rested when needed. After descending far enough, they ran into the elevator. It had been stopped by landing on some mushrooms, but the elevator shaft descended deeper and there were no bodies. The only sign of the missing pirates was the black fungal stains they had coughed onto the elevator. Malcolm and Breeches traveled downwards for hours until they reached the bottom. One of the tunnels started to glow, guiding them in. Malcolm's fear spiked. He couldn't fly away this deep in the earth. If this was a trap, there was no escape. The tunnel led to an immense cavern with a fungal forest in it. Glowing spores drifted in the air. They could hear the noise of people or creatures moving around somewhere in there. A fungus-covered person stepped out, and Malcolm realized with dismay that it was the mayor of the mining town. We welcome you to this place. The mayor wasn't alone. A number of fungal-infected humans were with him, and they had a mushroom guard escort. Malcolm spoke to the being controlling the mayor. Who are you? The mayor's response was to gesture behind him while saying, the Myco-Tyrant. As he turned, fungal light illuminated the area behind him, showing the tyrant. It had a fat, squat green body, covered in gills, and mushrooms grew from its back. We know you, Malcolm. Malcolm looked around, horrified. All of the people were speaking to him in unison. We are one. Malcolm asked, what do you want? The chorus of voices responded, everything. The story then switches over to Amalia, who is gazing in awe at Ixalan's inner world. Birds flew in the sky. Unfamiliar creatures roamed the grasslands. And the land itself curved upwards, making her feel like she was inside a sphere. The sun was very bizarre. It had a tail of metal shards, just like in her vision. The people here wielded weaponry with pink blades. There were little cyclopean constructs and men riding bats through the air. When Amalia saw the bats, she heard the voice from her visions call to her again. Come to me. Vito looked fanatical and triumphant. Kellen asked Amalia if she knew what was going on. She shook her head. One of the bats flew down, and a woman dismounted. She addressed them. I am Anim Pakal. I command the 1,000 moons. Who are you, and how did you open the seal? The ghost stepped forward. I was given the key so we could return after the Myco-Tyrant's defeat. The plan failed. The tyrant is even stronger now. Anim's face was a thundercloud. You've doomed us. The ghost spat back. The doom would have found you unprepared. Anim continued to blame the ghost until Huatli stepped up and said they would have found a way in without the ghost's help. Bartolome and Pashona agreed and explained that their civilizations also sought to open the door, so it would have been opened one way or another. Anim didn't look fully mollified, but leveled her gaze at Huatli and asked, Are you Koman? Anim explained the Koman were their ancient ancestors. Quintorius put forth the idea that the Koman might have made their way to the surface. They might all be cousins. Word of their arrival was being spread. Someone named Akal Pakal would come to greet them. Things turned sour when Anim learned that some of the visitors were vampires. She immediately summoned a magical shield while her troops surrounded the vampires, already preparing spells. Those who worship the great betrayer are our enemies. Imprison them, she commanded. Kellen groaned, Not again! Vito was livid, but his face shifted to a blank stare. This is his will, is all he said, when the blankless look left his face. Amalia, on her part, received no such vision. The story hops over to Wada, Huatli, and Quintorius enjoying a nice meal with the locals. After eating, they met with Akal Pakal, the steward of Oltec. She was arrayed in ceremonial robes and an incredibly heavy-looking gold headpiece. She welcomed them warmly, but wanted to know why they traveled with vampires. Huatli explained the alliance that they had with the vampires during the Phyrexian invasion and how she sought a more peaceful world going forwards. One of the imperial officers, Inti, strongly protested and said the vampires should be destroyed for the good of the empire and all of Ixalan. Quintorius, for his part, was busy talking with the old ghost. They were discussing the possibility of bringing his wife's spirit back. She had much useful knowledge about growing things. The story returns to Malcolm, surrounded by the fungal-infected townsfolk. They were all dead. He had lost them all. Why did you kill these people? He demanded. The Myco-Tyrant said, I changed them. I wanted to learn. When one of your kind found me while mining, I spread myself to him. Malcolm wondered if this thing knew it was killing these people. Was the plan to absorb them? The myco-tyrant continued, "We gather lore from flesh. We have always been here." The fact that they were talking at all meant Malcolm could attempt to negotiate. "What is it that you want?" The townsfolk responded all at once. "The sun. We want the sun from your above world." Malcolm wondered to himself, how would you even give this creature the sun? It's not possible. He wasn't about to explain that though. Then he pictured the tyrant overwhelming all of Ixalan, an entire world of fungal abomination. Malcolm's mind raced. He couldn't give this thing the sun. How was he getting out of this alive? The story then moves over to Amalia, who is imprisoned with the other vampires. The old text didn't have an actual prison, so they were just kept in detention rooms. Bartolome, Kellen, and Amalia shared a room, while Vito was in the room next door with some other vampires. Vito could be heard loudly intoning that the promised moment was at hand, and mist started to descend on the building they were being held in. Vito cried out, "Behold the might of Alcazats!" There was a gurgling and the smell of blood and the sound of bodies hitting the floor. And Vito's voice came again. "Now we reclaim our power." It was obvious that they had just sacrificed the human porters they had with them. No guards came at the sound. Bartolome turned to Amalia. "If I don't make it out of here alive, tell the queen everything." Amalia nodded, her face serious. The door to the room was torn off its hinges. Vito stood there with blood smeared on his armor. "Alcazats demands a sacrifice. We will use the outsider." He gestured at Kellen. Bartolome mouthed the word escape to Amalia. She pulled out her map and quill, while Bartolome lunged at Vito. They grappled with each other, and their struggle blocked the doorway, preventing Vito's troops from entering and helping him. Kellen's light blades blazed to life as Vito got the upper hand and snapped Bartolome's neck. He dropped Bartolome's lifeless body to the floor. Amalia made a little mark on her map, and the wall behind her vanished, and the thick mists rolled in, obscuring everyone but Kellen from sight. His light swords made it impossible to mistake him. Amalia grabbed Kellen's arm. "Run!" They dashed furiously off into the mists. And that ends the 4th installment of the story, my friends. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what we're doing here, you can support the channel by joining the channel membership or the channel's Patreon. Big shout out to all the channel's members and patrons. You guys rule. The next installment of this story comes out tomorrow, so come on back. In the meantime, go enjoy some more lore on this channel, because remember, my friends, lore is life.